Hello and welcome to this episode of the Youth Roundtable on Civic Space TV. I am Phillip Muliisa. On this episode, we discuss matters that are quite not so well in the life of people like Dr. Kiiza Eron, Csl Kiiza, Haji, Abale, Ntale, and many other Ugandans that are facing trial at the court-martial in this beautiful country, Uganda, and we want to assess what this means for these particular individuals, what it means for the country, what it means for the politics, but also going forward, how we can improve or continue with the same in this country. And joining me on that conversation is a panel of distinguished citizens of this country who are going to share quite a lot of knowledge about this particular issue because they are privy to many things that happen out there. And by the end of the show, we should have a clear picture of what it is and maybe what needs to be done to make sure we are all comfortable in this country. Now, before we get into the conversation, I'll invite them to first say hello to you, my viewers, and later we go into the conversation. I'll start with the gentleman at the extreme end.
Thank you, moderator. My name is Saddam Hussein Abale. It's my maiden appearance here, and I'm happy to be here.
You're most welcome, Saddam Hussein Abale. The last Saddam Hussein we knew in this world was a very controversial gentleman, but we have a good one here, and hopefully we shall have the best out of him. Most welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Ndugu.
Thank you. My name is David Richard Ntale. I'm a Christian, a Ugandan, and a member of the Alliance for National Transformation, in that order. So you should note that if I say anything that for the Alliance for National Transformation, and it doesn't conform with my faith, then it's null and void. So it's in that order.
Christian, Ugandan, Alliance for National Transformation. David Ntale, you're most welcome to the conversation, and we can't wait to hear what the Alliance is saying about the imprisonment, but also what the Christians are saying. Thank you. And last but not least.
Thank you very much. My name is Oprah Nkalubo. I'm a second-year law student at Makerere University. I'm a youth leader and a human rights advocate, and I'm so glad to be here. Can't wait to dive into the conversation.
Yes, law student, youth leader, human rights activist, very many things. And I know there are many things they have not told you about themselves, but we shall get to learn about them as we go into the conversation. But you're most welcome, Oprah, and we can't wait to hear what the law is about the court-martial, but also what the human rights of Abale, Ntale, Dr. Kiiza Eron, and Aaron Kiiza are, and many other Ugandans, because reports show us that we have many other people out there in those particular places. But I want to start with you, Hussein.
Yes.
Look, we are talking about Ugandans, we are talking about politicians in some sense, we are talking about a lawyer, we are talking about people that belong to this country and the general court-martial. I want you to first give us an understanding of what actually is at the court-martial, these people, why they are there, and what is happening in there.
Thank you, moderator. I think to set the stage straight, the army claims, because it is alleged, they are alleging that Dr. Kiiza Eron and the company were trying to make plans of treason in nature, that is trying to overtake the sitting government of the country. And they also allege that Besigye and the colleague were found in possession of firearms, which are a monopoly of the UPDF, as per the UPDF Act. But now, the issue in contention that many are raising, that I'm sure our viewers out there, including yourself, want to hear, is that Besigye, first of all, is a retired army officer. And Haji Ntale is not a soldier, is not a serving soldier. Now, how come they have ended up into military facility being tried for offenses that the EPDF alleges actually falls within their armpits? Now, if I may just draw your attention to Article 210 of the Constitution, You see, the framers were very, very clear as they were inserting that article, that Parliament will be bestowed with powers. I'm glad I actually have a learning colleague here. Parliament will be bestowed with powers to make rules or laws that regulate the UPDF. And among which is now when we saw the enactment of the UPDF Act that provided the different hierarchies and the different levels of disciplinary units within the UPDF. Now, in particular, if you from about section 182 to about section 190 of the UPDF Act, it gives us the different disciplinary units of the UPDF. Now, if you critically analyze the issues that is ongoing, the question would be, like I said earlier on, are they two properly before the court? That is the biggest issue that the question will need to answer. But now my take is, my interpretation is, and if you look at, we have so many cases that have been decided over. Like, for example, we have the case of the Attorney General versus Uganda Law Society. We have the recent constitutional amendment of Michael Kabaziguruka versus Attorney General, where I quote, where Justice Madrama clearly said in his judgment that the UPDF is not a competent court to try persons who do not subscribe or who are not officers of the UPDF. So now you need to draw a line in between the basics that people know as a politician or as an activist and Obeid Ntale, which apparently I don't know much about, and others that are being charged before. Are they properly before the court? So to me, the answer will be no. Why am I saying no? We have case law that have spoken to that fact. We have statutes, we have provisions of the law that are very clear to that regard. Now, if you look at Article 129 of the Constitution that creates the courts of judicature, now I want to be convinced whether the court martial is within the different forums or the different court systems that were created under Article 129 of the Constitution.
Thank you so much, Hussein. And he needs to be convinced about whether court-martial is rightful to be holding Obeid Ntale, Csl Eron, and many other Ugandans that are out there, including very recently we had a team from the National Unity Platform that was being tried in that particular court, tribunal, whatever you want to call it, but we'll get to that conversation a little later. David, from the Christianity that you talk about, what do you make of the holding of Dr. Kiiza Besigye, Obeid Ntale, Aaron Kiiza, and the very long list of Ugandans that have gone through that particular institution? Well,
thank you. I want to read for you in Deuteronomy chapter 17 verse 8. When God was directing the children of Israel, he told them, when matters of justice come up that are too much for you, hard cases regarding homicides, legal disputes, fights, take them up to the central place of worship that God, your God, has designated. So, these things happening, and oftentimes they will keep happening, but it is important that these things we take them to God. There are things that are beyond human concern, because you see, the things that are happening, somehow they are appalling. Because
David, let's be clear on this.
Yes.
You are telling me that Dr. Kiiza Besigye, Obeid Ntale, or any other person that is being charged for treason or alleged treason, say murder or whatever, should be taken to church for that matter?
No, it's not. The word is because these allegations, court processes should be a way of seeking justice in society. So if they are abused, because the way things are being handled is because you look at the contempt of court charge against the lawyer of Dr. Csl Eron. I mean, there's no such case in court martial, at least which is it's not reasonable. I don't know if it is somewhere in the Constitution, even the things which are based in to come up with such a case. There are no grounds, there are no reasonable grounds. But the people who are in charge of that court seem like to have a right to do anything. They are trying to give an image where it is dangerous to oppose the people in power. And you know, power trickles down. That is a fact that you will never avoid. So if those people are doing sham things, it's trickling down from the top. So it's very important to note that there is a system. And you know, there's a way the criminal gangs can be united, while the people who have good intentions, each one is trying to be on their own.
So which is the criminal gang?
I can't tell, but there are things that happen that are systematic. Like something happens and you think, oh, it is going. Someone is going to be appalled and say, why is this happening? But somehow they happen in an organized manner. Someone is killed, someone is taken court. Like there's a way I've had where I live. When you try to oppose maybe a corrupt thing, they will tell you, hey, man, you might be killed. Be careful. Don't speak. So like that fear, and yet the criminals should be the ones hiding. It'd be like the corrupt should be the ones hiding, but the society seems to be upside down, and that's why I say this for us to create a conscience in these people, so that they now do what their rightful roles. Then we need to go to our places of worship, pray, and try to turn things around.
Thank you. Very powerful reminder that you people have actually to pray, because society seemingly is upside down. David tells us so. Thank you, David, for that submission. I want to come to you, Oprah. Look, you have a lawyer who went to represent a client at the General Court Martial. As we speak, he is serving 9 years at Luzira prison. And I know that's the journey you are taking. Tomorrow you will be probably representing me at the General Court Martial. What do you make of this turn of events and things that are happening at the General Court Martial?
Thank you so much. Dear viewers, it's important to note that what is happening is outrageous. It is a complete violation of human rights. It is something that as a country we should stand together and completely go against. Just to give our viewers a brief history to know where this is coming from. So this is Csl Eron Kiiza, and he's trying to get to the bench where the defendant lawyers sit. And as a counsel, it is your right to actually access those premises and sit there. But he's trying to access them, and there are army officers who are barring his way. And then he talks to them, he tells them, can you let me through? What have I done? What have I done? And before we know, he's being held up in arms. We hear he's being assaulted. Before we know, he's put in the cage with Dr. Kanokiza Besije. And as events trickle down later in the evening, without any sort of hearing, without any trial, he is sentenced to 9 months in prison. What does this mean for human rights in Uganda, and why am I saying that we as Ugandans need to stand up for this? First and foremost, as Hussein earlier said, the court martial is no place for a civilian. The laws are clear on that. This is a place for army officers, officers who are in practice and have violated one or some disciplinary codes of the UPDF. This is no place for civilians. But here you have a counsel who is denied audience. We call it denial of audience. Him being able to present his case before the court. He is denied that because he's not allowed to even go sit where he's supposed to sit. But on top of that, Our constitution in Article 28 clearly states that everyone should have the right to fair hearing. Fair hearing looks like even when you have been charged with a crime, which is contempt of court, you're supposed to be given time to make your plea. You're supposed to be given time to make your defense, to gather your lawyers. The case is read before you and you defend yourself, and there is some sort of trial. But what happens is around 4 p.m. in the evening, a case is read, a sentence is delivered, and a man is put in jail. We don't have anything like fair trial. We're asking ourselves, where is the rule of law? What happened to us following the law to the letter? That is something that is no longer happening. And today it is him, Aaron Kiiza, but then you never know. Tomorrow it can be you and I.
Oh, it shouldn't be me. But thank you, Oprah. You see, you say something very important. You talk about fair hearing. When you go to this court system and you talk about a case has to be read, then you put out your plea, then your defense lawyers come and make a case on your behalf, and so many things. The general court martial, like Hussein earlier said, and you did add to it, it's no place for a civilian. What happens when a civilian offends this particular institution? Is the general court martial meant now to go to the civilian courts and make a case against someone that offended them?
All right. So it's important to note that when we talk about contempt of court is in two ways. It is either criminal or civil. And in this particular case, it's even none. It's not contempt of court, because the Supreme Court around 2021 gave clarity on what criminal contempt of court looks like. It looks like a scenario where you have any person probably yelling at the presiding judge or uttering obscenities and things that are morally dangerous to the court setting. So that is what the law and the case law and jurisprudence says contempt of court is. But when you look in the scenario that occurred, it is not even contempt of court. Because if you have a good defense lawyer, if they were given time, you really go down to the ingredients of what contempt of court is, it really does not stand. But even then, contempt of court from time immemorial has been used as a way of injustice, as a way of bringing down enemies. You just want to get against somebody. And when it's being used by courts like the court martial, it even becomes more dangerous, because in the past, and what we are seeing now in Uganda, is contempt of court being used as a way to silence, as a way to bring fear, as a way to really curtail the legal space and fair hearing and legal representation. Because if you just raise your voice and you say, I want to go to my chambers, and that in and of itself gives you over 9 months in jail, then we are not safe. This is something that is not even, it's difficult to discuss the law within this aspect, because it is unlawful. So even when we try to say, oh, probably they should have got this gentleman and put him in a civilian court and probably tried him, and it's hard to work with, because the whole scenario is unlawful. The way it started, the claims against him, all those things are unlawful, and it's something that it's time for us. It's really time for us to open our eyes and see what is happening, because our legal spaces are being defranchised. The judiciary is no longer the judiciary. It's as though it works for a higher power. It's as though it's no longer about the people, but it is about selfish interests.
Thank you so much. Hussein, you see, she talks about fair hearing, and to make this a little broad, many things have happened around this case. Number one, the lead counsel for the defense of Dr. Kiiza Eron, senior counsel Martha Karua, in the start of things was denied the permit to practice and come and defend her client. Then we saw later many of the other lawyers have been denied access to this court. We've seen stories of how they have to go through about 4 or 5 checks at the entrance of the General Court Martial, and in their words they've called it humiliating checks, especially to the ladies, and many other things. Why should a court system try to either deny a person they are holding, fully holding with all authority they have, him in cells, they can bring him at any time? Why would they frustrate their legal team? Why would they frustrate their supporters? Why would they even try to stop a lawyer from accessing the court like she was telling us about Counsel Kiiza?
Thank you. I think, let me first make a few comments about the offense or the charge of contempt of court. You see, it is a creation of the law under Article 28, subsection 12. Article 28, clause 12 of the Constitution. Actually, the law is very clear. It says, except contempt of court. Any person who will be charged before any court with any offense, that offense should be written and should have the punishment prescribed. Now, you see, it is very good to be honest. You see, the incident that happened to Counsel Aaron Kiiza, with all fairness, you see, as a lawyer, there is a given etiquette, there is a given decorum that you're expected to exhibit. Let's be very fair on a very fair ground. Now, you see, you can't walk into any person's office and you start banging tables and start making noise. And I'm well aware that you and the viewers have witnessed over time the conduct and behavior of Counsel Aaron Kiiza, my senior. So as to whether he was properly charged, it's a discussion for another day. But you see, the offense of contempt of court, the law has left it wide. So long as you do anything that goes contrary. We recently saw our colleague Malema Viris being sent to prison for contempt of court. You see, the moment you do certain things that go contrary to the normal norm, you're expected to come to court. Yes, he was denied to access the bar, but what was his resultant action to that regard? That is very key for us to address our minds too. Now, like I said, as to whether he has been properly charged or not is a question of another day. But to me, the issue is when you come before a tribunal, you see, the truth is the General Court Martial is not a court, it's a quasi-tribunal that is meant to undertake disciplinary issues relating to the UPDF. Now, because their clients are before that quasi-tribunal, they are forced to appear before it. But as you appear before it, there are rules and regulations that you ought to really follow. Okay? Back to your question of fair trial. You see, Article 28 of the Constitution is very clear. Fair trial is a very broad word that has so much meaning in it. One of it will be to have a right to be heard. And it was clear from how the case was handled, Counsel Aaron Kiiza was not given the right to be heard. It was just a matter of, like my sister said, bring him to the dock, pronounce the charge sheet, sentence to prison. So there was no right to fair hearing. He was not given that particular aspect to be heard, either through himself directly or through his lawyers. Then the same provision of the law also tells us one has to go through a speedy trial before a competent court. Like I earlier said, in the constitutional petition of number 48 of 2016, Michael Kavaraziruka versus Attorney General, it was clear Justice Madrama said the court martial is not a competent court. So therefore, what does it mean? It cannot render the expected services that will be rendered by the normal courts that we know.
So Hussein, what you are telling us and the viewer is that whatever is happening at the General Court Martial since the arrest of Dr. Kiiza Eron and even the other people that have gone through that particular institution is null and void?
The proceedings are null and void until the Supreme Court pronounces itself, because the very case I'm referring to is before the Supreme Court, because the Attorney General appealed the decision of the Constitutional Court, because the Constitutional Court held clearly, said no civilian should appear before the General Court Martial. So until then, when the Supreme Court makes a contrary judgment, that's when now we can. But as it is, the status quo remains that no civilian, that what is happening before the General Court of Martial is null and void. It's not supposed to be happening, because no civilian is supposed to appear before that court, because the court is created specifically for UPDF. That is why, in that case, I still want to interest you and my colleagues to go and address yourselves to that case. The judges were very clear, says Parliament was very deliberate in trying to create that very unit because it relates to the UPDF. And UPDF, it is a specific thing. You cannot now be, be doubting whether UPDF has one leg that is to the civilian, or it is strict UPDF, period. Nothing more, nothing less. So that is the status quo until the Supreme Court pronounces itself on that matter. We will still go by the ruling of the Constitutional Court that whatever is happening before that court is a null and void. But I must state very clearly that as to the actions of the parties that appear before it, it's another matter. All right? They could be wrong in how they respond to the issues. Because if you look at the video recordings, the clips on social media, people are violent. Okay, there could be some mistakes made by the UPDF of putting so many checks, harassing people. Those ones are there on record. But do you need to do the same? In any case, I would think they should be more civilized to actually expose the weaknesses of the court. But you see, the contrary is true, that people are singing in court, people are making statements in court, people are shouting in court. And our colleague, Csl Eron Kiiza, was banging tables, shouting. So I think it was not worthy of him as a lawyer, given the decorum and the etiquette that is known of lawyers.
Maybe it is an expression to assert the fact that you've just talked about, that they are in a wrong place where they shouldn't be, and certainly they do not conform to the so-called decorum you talk about you're supposed to exhibit in the court and so on.
Well, I would think that will not be the prerequisite remedy of shouting. There are so many avenues. Move the CJ, Chief Justice, fix this case and have it heard. Dispose it before you so that we know what is the state of the General Court Martial. Can it try civilians or not? Seek other alternatives. We are colleagues in the practice.
You and I have seen this legal team go to the Chief Justice's offices and they were turned away.
But you see, everything is a process. Everything is a process. Visiting him in a day and you expect results to be given out by 2 days, 3 days, I think would be a haste. And everything is a process, to me.
You have talked about the Attorney General appealing to that constitutional decision in the Kavazguruka case. And over time, people have said it is long overdue. The Constitutional Court is not sitting to hear this appeal. Again, what do you do when all the normal procedures are not being followed? You
see, our courts, our courts are engulfed in two backlogs. They engulf into backlogs. I can't speak for the judiciary why it is taking so long, but you see, it also beats the understanding of a normal human being. Why would this take so long? But like I've said, our courts are engulfed in two backlogs of so many cases. And if you've witnessed over time, these cases normally take ages. But you see, there's what we call a certificate of urgency within our systems of the court. Pay for it, put it before the registrar of the Supreme Court, because this is an urgent matter. It is provided for. You can pay for certificate of urgency to show that this matter is an urgent which has to be expedited. So if that was not done, I would think we can exhaust other remedies, but this to me would be something to bring to the attention of the CJ. This is urgent because we have been favored. This has to be determined to make sure we move forward.
Thank you so much, and hopefully this CJ will really realize this is an urgent matter because people are in places they're not supposed to be in. David,
Yes.
look, whereas we are looking at what these people are going through, on the other side, government is saying they are protecting Ugandans, and they say, for example, in the case of Dr. Kiiza Eron, this is a person that was threatening to attack this country and probably cause loss of life, and many things would happen. What should government do when faced with such circumstances and you realize the public is not in support of what is happening?
Thank you. I was one of the people who were not so much against the trying Dr. Eron and the court martial, because I thought maybe it is true that they have evidence of weapons. There are a lot of maybes, and I was like, and me, I love the military. It's from the time there's a General Mugisha want to build a disciplined army in his time, and that discipline has been deteriorating, but it's not so much, and that's why when you see this government, most of the programs, they want them to be run by the army because of the discipline that was built there. So, you know, General Muntu is a good disciplinarian. So, because of that discipline, I always loved the army. And I know so many people in the army who are very disciplined. They want things to be done in the right order. So, I was optimistic that if a case is tried in the court martial, it is independent of being like it will not be influenced by public opinion. They can try it and follow the law to the letter, and I was hopeful that that would be a good thing, because finally justice can be served. If he really did it, to be found. But as events unfolded, for example, you know, there are things that happen, like he has talked about the behavior of the lawyer of Csl Kiiza Eron, and it was the first time I saw it, it was not good. I was like, why would someone behave like that? But then as proceedings went on, the way the court handled the matter, I felt like, I think some of these behaviors are created by the government itself. Like, you know, it is hard for you, even if you are in a very celebratory mood, to go on a morning function, like maybe a burial function, and then you start doing your celebratory function. It's always the environment dictates sometimes. So some of those behaviors that you saw of the lawyer behaving like that, if you look deeper, you see that actually that is the way people survive, because if you are trying to behave normally, they take you quietly. If they were interested in still imprisoning him, they would find a way of imprisoning him, and he would go quietly. We would never know, nobody would care. But at least the way he did, everybody is now concerned. The people are talking because he did it. Probably that's the way he could go prison with in light, not quietly like that. So, but it's important that the government, the simple thing the government has to do is to observe constitutionalism. Yeah, if the law says you should try him in a civil, you should try someone in a civil court, why not? The civil court is still under government. Why not try him in a civil court? Why not try him why take him to the court martial? What would be the difference? The simple thing the government has to do is to follow the law. Once we follow the law, because you see, at the end of the day, every article of the Constitution that you abuse, you are driving society towards lawlessness. You are making you are making the laws invalid. Because so if you make the laws invalid, then you are cutting all possible ways of solving any disagreements peacefully. So the chairman of the court martial should know this, that if you follow the law, then you are trying to make the law powerful. If you abuse the law, then you are making the law powerless. And that drives us to the point where it's survival for the fittest. So that's why at the end of the day, maybe even if Kiiza was doing what they are choosing him of, it's still the creation of the government. You saw the continued dismantling of elections. You see, now we have the person occupying the office of the president is Mr. Yoweri Museveni. Everybody knows that we don't know how actually whether it came peace or right, because there are claims that someone else won, and there was blackouts. There were a lot of invalid things which happened, and then the Electoral Commission comes up with the winner. So there's a school of thought that probably these people, the friend Museveni and his friends, came and made him president, and against the real president who was elected. We don't know that. We can't confirm. That's why it's good to follow the law. Once everything is followed, then the people will see that justice is being served.
Thank you so much, David, for that. When you follow the law, you make it powerful, and when you abuse the law, you make it powerless. It is a very powerful submission, and I thank you for keeping it the Youth Roundtable on Civic Space TV. We head into a very short break, and we shall be right back.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from that very short break. It is the Youth Roundtable on Civic Space TV. I am Phillip. This episode, we are discussing events at the General Court Martial in the matter of Dr. Csl Abale, Ntale, Csl Eron, Kiiza, and indeed many other people in that particular institution that are making either things run or that are being made to go through that institution courtesy of actions they did or did not do, subject to what the judgments will look like now. Joining me on that conversation is a panel of distinguished citizens. I have Hussein here, David, and Oprah, and they are giving me a lot of information about this particular subject, but also in this segment we'll make recommendations of how we can better this situation so that we don't have the many what-ifs that David was referring to earlier, and indeed we have a streamlined flow of the justice system in this country. Where we left off, we are discussing the contempt, and David and Hussein talked to us about this contempt, and they had varying interpretations to this effect. But I want to come to you, Oprah. Look, if now we are discussing civilians in the court-martial, and almost all of you agree that it is not acceptable, it should not be happening, we should not have civilians in the general court-martial, and I've had many people, including General Flavian Aloyso, say that Colonel Besigye, because he had served in the army since way back, he is not actually civilian. He says this person is still a military person, and therefore he is fit to be in the court-martial. But my question then was, how about Obey? How about the other people? How about the NUP supporters that had been through that process, and many other people? And I want you to tell me, what is the spirit, first from the part of government, but also specifically of the UPDF, in wanting to always assert their force, their power over civilians who should ideally be people looking at them for protection?
Thank you very much for that question. Our viewers, I just want to make something very clear. It is as clear as day that the government of this country is constantly scuffling the rule of law. It is constantly making sure that it suppresses people deliberately, to make sure that its agendas go forth, and anyone who tries to come against it, anyone who tries to push for an alternative method or carry out any sort of activism is going to find themselves in that cage. People have died through that system in the court-martial, people have died in jail, and these things continue to exist. And it's sad that we as Ugandans have sort of covered our eyes, and we have failed to see the trouble that is before us. It is as though we see the nimbus clouds get darker, and we know it may rain, but we don't carry umbrellas, and we wear vests, and we sort of make merry, and then it starts to rain, and we sort of, our conscience sort of is covered, and we think, oh, it's still shining, but yet anytime it could flood. And that is a situation that we are in. If you critically analyze the issues that are happening in the court-martial, every single person there, including even Aaron Kiiza, is deliberately being, this is a move that is happening deliberately by government to make sure that anyone who is advocating for change is put behind bars. They are silenced and they become voiceless. This is very, very, very deliberate, because even when we look at the issue of contempt of court, I know a lot has been said, but I beg to disagree on a few things. Contempt of court, in its very description in the Constitution, is one that is so open. And earlier I explained how in the past this has been used as a tool of injustice, and it's always used by trial courts, tribunals. You find that it's something which is not a crime that is so common in the Supreme Court and other courts, but in these courts it's quite alarming. It's usually charged a lot. But why is this so? It is because you find that people, let's say you're just reading a newspaper, contempt of court. You stood up when you're not supposed to stand up, contempt of court. You did this and this, contempt of court. So you find that anything can lead to contempt of court. And because it is that wide, the state has this is a measure that I can say is very well directed, very well calculated, that because when it comes to the legal team of Dr. Csl Kiiza Eron, the tribunal knows them very well. The court-martial knows each and every one of those individuals. But you find that even at the entrance, even before they enter the court, even before they put their feet into this room, some of them are denied entrance. They are checked and they tell them, go back to your car and go back where you came from. Those who are even allowed to enter inside, I know Hussein talked about how all lawyers are supposed to have this level of decorum and lawyers are supposed to act a certain way, etc. But when there is a deliberate effort by a higher power to suppress your right, and it is clearly seen by every single person, that's why I started by saying it is as clear as day. We should stop pretending. We should come back to reality and look for change and go and back to the grassroots and understand what are the challenges. We shouldn't brand this with saying decorum or this, because if it was us in those shoes, this is your constitutional right. You have been hindered. We've had lawyers like Kano Ernest Kalibala. He has been denied entrance into the court martial so many times. Some of these lawyers don't even get to step in there, yet this is their right. This is what they have practiced. And the ones who even get an opportunity to get in there are deliberately hindered by the forces in there. And when they are hindered, they brand, and when they are hindered, they are pushed. They are frustrated to a point of doing some of these outrageous things. And if we were in those very same shoes, I believe we would not act any different. We would even act worse, right? But now this is a situation that they've crafted so deliberately. And when a person is frustrated and they say a few words or they yell out a few words, then it is branded contempt of court. And a person is taken out of the picture for 9 months. So that happens to one lawyer. It will happen to 5 more. And this case of Dr. Csl Kiiza Eron will stay there. The 2026 elections will pass and he will still be in custody. And you will see, it is as clear as day. This is a regime thing. The regime is trying to have stable ground for 2026. And it's very clear. And that is why I'm saying we should, things of decorum, things of order, those things should stop. We should go back to what is democracy, what is rule of law. Something should not be tolerated from the word go. And we cannot trust government. David has been saying, oh, our government should carry out constitutionalism. We urge government, please follow the law. We are past that. People have been on streets of this country. People have written papers. People have been to courts, and we discussed case backlog here. You know, even when you put there paper of urgency, they'll tell you it got lost. Oh, we did not receive it. They will do anything to make sure that some people are put out of the picture, and it is very, very deliberate. So we cannot trust our government with our rights. That is where we have reached as a country. We cannot trust them with our future. So it's important for us to come together and look for alternative means to solve this challenge, whether they are radical, whether they are peaceful, whatsoever. As long as we make sure that the end goal is we see more rule of law, we see separation of powers actually happening, because the judiciary and parliament, all these different arms of government have now been sort of covered up. They've been taken up by the executive, and you can't differentiate which is which. And that it is raining in our country, and I don't know if it's flooding, but it's high time we wake up.
Thank you, Oprah, for that. Certainly it shouldn't be flooding, because if it is, then certainly we are all going to perish. But Hussein, when I come to you, look, the English keep telling us that desperate situations call for desperate measures. And in that line, we have something called the radical new bar in this country, under the auspices of Senior Counsel Isaac Semakande. He tells that people should be ready to challenge the status quo, and she asserts it. Aaron Kiiza was challenging these things, and many other lawyers have tried to challenge these things. Is it time to challenge the status quo, and if it's so, how do we do that?
Thank you, my brother Philip. I would like to rebut some of the arguments put forward by my sister. You see, we had some lawyers there like Eres Lukwago. Eres Lukwago is a known trouble causer in his past. But why is it that it was Counsel Aaron Kiiza who was charged with contempt, not Eres Lukwago and others? You see, let us.
Are you saying violence or something like that is a preserve of particular individuals?
No, it's not a preserve, but you would expect if you put Eron and Lukwago on a scale and weigh, given the past histories, given the past scenarios we have known, Lukwago has been known to be resistant over things. But there's no incident where I have seen Lord Mayor Lukwago behaving in ways, even when, by the way, even when Malema Breeze was charged with contempt of court, Eras Lukwago was appearing before, for that matter, but he was calm all through the case. So you see, certain things have to be put clearly. It is not right, and I don't subscribe to that school of thought that desperate means calls for desperate.
Hussein,
I don't subscribe.
You are human.
I don't subscribe to that.
What do you do when you are pushed
You
to
get-
the wall, to the corner?
My brother, there are better alternatives to resolve issues, better ones than this. Now, you go, you shout, you bang tables, you abuse people. Where do you end? Where do you leave the fate of your client? Remember, I'm your client, but I'm your client and you're my lawyer. You go shouting, making noise, and you're in prison. Where do you leave me as a client? Where do you leave my fate?
Look, the situation we're talking about is a place where people are not even given bail. There is no sign that these people are going to be released from this particular place.
That I am.
And you want to create a situation that certainly maybe this situation will change for the better in the future. We all know
No, but
revolutions come and there will certainly be sacrifices, but there will be change in the future.
my brother, I would still want to stick to my gun. You see, you don't change things by being radical. The radical bar, where has it put the society? Where is the law society right now? Do we still hold the values that we held before? You see, there's doing things out of the ordinary. You want to go off the status quo. But certainly, I don't subscribe to the school of thought of being violent, of using other means which are trying to portray that we are angry. There are ways of how you can express this. There are so many avenues, if I may state. You know, you go, you shout, you make noise, and you're taken to jail. Your case is finished. I can assure you, Csl Kiiza will serve the 9 months. He will. But where does it leave himself in the profession? Of course, in the eyes of the activists, in the eyes of the donor community, in the eyes of people who are like-minded like him, he will be a champion.
Hussein,
But where does he leave him?
There are people that died in the independence struggle, but in the end, countries became independent.
No, but you see, you can't compare that to such scenarios.
Because what we
You
are
can't.
addressing here is an injustice of having people in the court-martial that are not supposed to be there.
Okay, let me ask you a simple question. The lawyers are saying it is a sham exercise that is taking place. Why do you still continue going to the court-martial? To do what? To do what?
To represent your client.
At the same time, you're calling it sham. What are you doing?
And that's
You see-
why we talk
You see,
about the desperate
that's why
measures.
the best way is, to me, my view is, the best way is, there are other alternatives that you can really resolve this matter. And you get your clients out, but not shouting. Allow the process to proceed, because as of now, even the hearing of the case has not commenced. You have applications of applications of applications of applications before the court. You're delaying the whole process. Of course, ultimately, one will argue that we don't expect to get justice. One will argue. Any school of thought will say that we don't expect to get justice from there. You get the point? And I'm not saying I'm also subscribing to that school of thought. But, of course, the process is not, it's not proper. We're not proceeding right. But there are avenues, like I've said. We have a matter, we have a constitutional petition before the Supreme Court. That is what is actually hanging most of these issues. The moment the Supreme Court makes a pronouncement over that constitutional petition, I can assure you most of the things will be resolved. It is either it will confirm the ruling of the Constitutional Court that no civilian should appear before the General Court Martial, or it will reverse and make a contrary decision. Until then, when that decision is made, that's when now we can channel a way out.
How long do the citizens of this country have to wait for
Like
that
again, I've said, like my sister said, at times you apply for certificate of agency, it is lost, they keep telling you stories, but we have seen cases where lawyers have applied for and it has happened. Give it a try, than lamenting and making a lot of statements. By the way, to just set the record clear, many of you may be misconceiving or perceiving my position. I am not in support of any activity that is taking place before the General Court Martial. But I am also not in support of the misbehavior of the lawyers banging tables, making noise, thinking you're going to change the status quo. I can assure you not change the status quo, but it may even go to worse. What if in the next hearings some other lawyers behave like Aaron Kiiza, and they're taken to court again for contempt of court? So where does it leave these clients who are seeking for justice, who want representation as a constitutional right from their lawyers? So me, I would still want to think there are other avenues. Allow this court, as they term it, to make its pronouncement. You can apply for revision of their decision, because at the moment they're equating themselves to the level of the High Court. And as you're aware, at the level of the High Court, you can either apply for revision or review of such a decision, or you can appeal. You get the point? But ultimately, I will still state again, ultimately, what is holding us back is before the desk of the Chief Justice of Uganda. What is holding us back is still the constitutional petition that is before the Supreme Court. So my appeal would be, before this platform, that the Chief Justice has to act, because justice right now is in tatters. People are crying. Even the normal civilians are crying because they are following day in, day out. Chief Justice of this country, Alphys Awinyondolo, please act and make sure this matter is resolved. That will resolve so many of the queries, so many of the anger, so much of the depression people are going through. And by doing that, I can assure you, the matter will be put to rest.
Thank you so much, and the message to the Chief Justice of the country shall be delivered, and hopefully he will find it within his means to act like you request him to do, and we'll have things go back to the normal like we want it to be. David,
Yeah.
look, desperate situation, government is acting desperately, the lawyers are acting desperately, the people in prison are acting desperate. I was speaking to people that have visited these prisoners quite often, and they tell you the situation inside there is not very okay. To some of them it's actually worrying. What do we do to make sure things come back to normal even before we get to the decision of the Chief Justice and his quorum?
Well, when you are saying he doesn't subscribe to the school of thought that desperate situations call for desperate measures, I was thinking, do you have an option? Can you decide whether to subscribe to it or not? Because supposing you see a snake here, will you decide whether now to jump or not? You jump, and you can regret later that I wish I didn't jump. So some situations.
But you see the level of measure,
yeah,
varies.
Some situations they just happen. You know, life is both logical and psychological. The logical, you can decide, you can say, okay, now according to this situation, let me act like this, let me do this. Sometimes it's psychological. You are put in a situation where you act and your emotions, you can even regret later, why did I do that? We don't know now what Eron is thinking, but he was in a situation where like he was being put down. I mean, we have seen over time when he was in court, he was reasoning out these people, giving them everything, but like they disregarding him, and now he's here, they are sending him to the back. We don't know what their intention was.
Do you think that the banging of the tables can actually deliver the justice we desire to pick from these places?
No. It cannot. It cannot deliver, but it is. Like I told you, it's not something that you decide whether to bang tables. Sometimes it comes like there's a psychological bit of life where so that's why I told you that some of these behaviors are a creation of the government, and I ask the people who are in government. Okay, I know there are a lot who are not. Disregarding, who are not in regard of the law, but they are good people in government, and it's important that the good people come together. That's why the Alliance for National Transformation was formed, where the good people can now try to come and form an alliance, and we build a system which can take over the current system. Because, you know, at the end of the day, we are each trying to confront this system, which is disregarding justice and just focus on someone. I had someone saying that the Museveni is the constitution, one of the civil servants, and imagine that school of thought. It seems like an individual thought, but the way they act, the way they do, it's like an organized. It's like an organized, let me say, criminal gang. But it is important if we can build a proper system that can replace that. Because supposing Museveni is not there today, will the country collapse? No. So I ask you people, don't hold the country at ransom. Let's build a system that's proper for that can take forward the country, because it's important. Just imagine, why is the Chief Justice not pronouncing himself on a matter as urgent as that, and with things proceed? Why do people have to get to that emotional state? Because it's important. The more you provoke people, the worse it gets.
Wow. Thank you so much, David, for that, and I hope the message and the cries are being heard out there, and certainly some action is taken to that effect, so that these situations are actually corrected and this country moves smoothly, everyone is happy, and indeed we see progress like we desire to see. Oprah.
Philip, before Oprah comes in, you see, there has been a very toxic environment created. If you're not radical, you don't fit in. I want to give the example of his party leader, Mugisha Muntu. You see, because he doesn't have the radicalism in him, that radical mindset, that's why he was pushed out of FDC. That's why he has failed, on record, he has failed to attract any one member of parliament up to date. Because you see, he's a cordial, aggressive, mentally person who wants to do a strategic plan that goes systematic one after the other. But you see, the Ugandan environment has already been built to be radical, like the school of thought you're talking about. Desperate means calls for desperate measures. And that is killing the politics of this country, and that is killing the type of leaders we have. If you don't subscribe to a given school of thought, it is either you're out or you camouflage. And you see, ANT is suffering of the same, because Muntu seems to be a systematic person who wants to do things. That's why he refused defiance as an anthem at FDC, and he was pushed out. So, you see, we must remove that toxicity of being radical, of using means which are violent. If not, some people will lose places or will lose space to fit in. Like, for example, the party leader of FDC, of ANT, because he is looked at as a cordial, humble person, which many think cannot be able to fit in the system.
Thank you. Oprah, look, Hussein tells us that the radicalism cannot achieve anything. And he says you just have to conform, and maybe that way you will achieve. What do you think? And in any case, do we see progress if we just sit back and say, okay, sir, how are you? Salute things and continue.
Thank you so much. I think one thing that we all agree on this panel is that there is a need for change. We are all not happy with the situation that's at hand in our country, and that we all agree on. But the means to which we probably get an end is where we seem to clash. But I think that all these measures can work. You see, we are different people, different personalities, different mindsets, different backgrounds. We are all different. But if we agree on the idea that there should be change, then I think that each and every one of us in our different capacities, if somebody believes that they can thrive in an era or in a manner that is systematic, that is follow protocol. Okay, what avenues do we have? Right to so and so, help so and so. If there are people who believe in structure and systems, so let them try that way. Many have tried, many have succeeded, many have not. Maybe they can be successful. Then they are also a particular group of people who believe in the radical mindset. And the radical system, if we are to scrutinize it very well, there are points in which it has failed, but then there are also points in which it has delivered results. And that also goes to the systematic thought. There are places where it has delivered results, there are places where it has failed. And then there are people who they don't really believe in the systematic, they don't really believe in this radicalism goal. They're sort of right in between there. You know, there are those people who you'd probably, and I'm just giving an example, but they are wide. They're probably people who you see on social media.
The centrists, the liberals.
So, yeah, so something like that, you know. So you won't really see them on the street, but you also want to see them writing papers to different offices. So they are within there. And I feel like in all these different spaces, if we have the same goal, if we want to achieve the same thing, I believe that because we are different, we can work together even in our differences. The ones who are radical, the ones who are systematic, the liberals, all of us can work together to this particular end. We may not use the same methods, but as long as we're focused to getting to the right place, I believe we can do that. Otherwise, if we keep shunning each other and say, okay, you radicals, guys who are systematic, you know, and we cut, and everyone is trying to cut the other and trying to displace the other, then we really won't get somewhere.
Oprah, one of the things that keep coming up in this country is the need for a national dialogue. And when you listen to people like Norbert Mao, when you listen to the Interreligious Council of Uganda, when you listen to members of the civil society, they keep saying, let us sit down as a country, discuss all these issues and come up with something that will push us forward. What do you think about that?
Wow. Okay. National dialogue. Okay. As I said, I don't know who is going to sit on that panel in the national dialogue, but I'm not laughing to say it's a bad idea, but with the way Uganda is currently, it is something that is really far from reality. It is important that we work in the space that in the spaces that we are in. Otherwise, we will live when there's a lot of anarchy going on. You know, even in a parliament where we expect dialogue and you hear one view from the other, one view from the other, you end up finding this one has, you know, jumped on top of this one, army is coming in, stopping this fight, doing this. So with the way the Ugandan system looks, national dialogue is a good initiative, but the person who would be, let's say, the central figure should be a neutral person, a person who is able to be sort of like a nexus, a nucleus that connects the people of Ant who are more systematic, connects the people of Noop who are more of activists, connects those that are in between. The person who is central to this national dialogue should not be a person who in the eyes of the people already sort of has a side. You know, this should be chaired by a person who is neutral and a person who can be trusted, or a group of people who can be trusted or pull together these different branches and then sort of be the nucleus that holds it together. Otherwise, without that, it's far from reality.
Thank you. Far from reality. David.
Yeah.
We are at a time when we are discussing things to do with transition, change of power in this country.
Yes.
And we are looking at the radicals, and we are looking at the liberals, and we look at the conformists. What do we do to move this country forward? Can the national dialogue be of help in this particular situation?
When you're talking of the national dialogue, I think of elections. For me, every election is a national dialogue. You don't go in the election thinking you are going to win, but the reason I always want to go in the election is because hoping that voices will be heard, voices of all Ugandans. And this is what is most important, that the people who are in charge of the elections, this is why you must be very careful while handling elections. You know, General Museveni is just one person and maybe his family, but we have a country. And I also want to talk to the people in the opposition. While we have a regime to dispose of, we also have a country to preserve. So it's very important to balance the two. So an election is, for me, is the realistic national dialogue. You know, when you go in the election, even if you don't win, there are voices that are heard. Kiza one time came with UPE, came with removal of certain head tax, and he didn't win, but his ideas won, because at the end of the day, even if the other party will cheat, he will accept to bring in the ideas that were popular. So it's very important, first of all, for each and every citizen to utilize their responsibility of participating in the election.
Would you be proud of a government of national unity where the Alliance for National Transformation is in partnership with the NRM, with the NUP, and they are running this country?
What's important is not which party is in charge, but what the people in government are doing. Yeah, I don't know if you understand. If Noop today became, for example, Bobi Wine became the president, and he started doing what Museveni is doing, it doesn't make sense. Even if the Alliance for National Transformation is the one which is in charge, that's why we have chosen the difficult path, where we are building systematically. This one said the ant is suffering because of what is happening. No, ant is building because of what is happening. We have chosen that path. It's not very hard for me to go the street and shout and get cameras around me, but that's not the path we want. We have chosen to build systematically, invite each of you, and even we have a system where people contribute to the financing of the party themselves, because you see, whoever has the money has the power. So if the party is dependent on members, then members have the power. So, but what's most important is we have to participate in this. I said previously that voting is your right as a citizen, but for me as a Christian, it is your responsibility, because you know leadership comes from God, and you, as a Christian, you are the co-worker with God. You can't have a church where you will expect a drunkard to come and give the prophecy. So if leadership comes from God, you expect the leader, the people who work with God, to do that, and your voting is very important. So that's what that's where the realistic national dialogue will happen. But this sitting on a table with these people in NRM, they will just come up and build a quasi-conversation about it and say you have also joined them. So it's very important.
Thank you, David. Hussein, I want to pick your view about this. Look, every other day we are having conversations about inequalities in the economics. inequalities in the politics, inequalities, tribalism, nepotism, corruption. Here we are talking about injustice. Do you think a national dialogue, an initiative like that, could be of use to this country to see that we get rid of all these challenges and have consensus that pushes us forward as a country?
Thank you, my brother Philip. Unfortunately for me, I'm an optimist. I'm not a pessimist. So to that question, yes, I think it is long overdue and it is something we need as a country. Also, the second unfortunate thing is I don't have another country that I call home. It is only Uganda that I call home. So I would want to exhaust every other avenue that can ensure peace reigns, that can ensure me and my colleagues and others go on with doing their livelihood activities and continuing their day-to-day activities. You see,
Maybe let me ask, as you were saying yes to the national dialogue, that national dialogue, I need you to highlight how it will be different from what happens in Parliament, what happens in IPOD, because that national dialogue, what difference would it make compared to what is happening?
Thank you. I was still driving my point home. So I totally agree that it is long overdue. For the record, I think we have never had one. There are seemingly occasions that may portray a national dialogue, but we have never had something called a national dialogue where we bring several actors on board. Like I was saying, I don't have another country I call home. It is only here, Uganda. And what is key to me for a national dialogue to happen is goodwill from all parties. We understand there are so many differences. People will accuse a different tribe of benefiting from government jobs. People will accuse a different sect of benefiting more from government offers than others. People will accuse given tribes of being more empowered or being more favored over others. So how do you resolve this? You must be able to show that, look, we are all Ugandans. Museveni is an individual. Uganda is bigger than Museveni. Certainly, this country will live and me and Museveni will go. And others will go and will leave this country. But this country will live and this country is bigger than all of us. So there's nothing that is impossible. The key mindset for me is that everything is possible and can be achieved. But also the challenge I have is that, you see, you come for a given event like that, but already with a biased what? With a biased mind. You can't achieve anything. You see, it's like me going to ask you for a favor, well knowing at the back of my mind I won't be able to achieve it. So first things, like he asked me directly to his question, what can we do differently? Number one, we need to have stringent procedures and stringent terms laid on the table. If this is going to be a national dialogue, who is the beneficiary of the national dialogue? It shouldn't be an individual called Museveni. It shouldn't be an individual called Mugisha Muntu. It shouldn't be an individual called Saddam. It shouldn't be an individual called Kiiza Eron, but a Ugandan. That should be, for me, that is the first facet of it. The beneficiary of it should be Ugandans. If we're talking about jobs, if we're talking about, now we have oil. If we're talking about distribution of infrastructure, who is the beneficiary? The truth is, it is on record, and I can't lie about this. The truth is there are regions that you ask, is this in Uganda? Because of the poor infrastructure, because of the dilapidated health facilities. But there are other regions where the facilities are okay. So that's why I'm saying the first beneficiary of the dialogue should be a Ugandan. If you go with that mindset and with that target, I can assure you it will be able to achieve its target. Number two, we need to have impartiality. My sister talked about who is going to spearhead. I recently overheard the Uganda Interreligious Council pushing for that. Now, our colleague Norbert Mao, Honorable Minister for Justice, when he was appointed, he said among his key deliverables is the national dialogue. But in whose interest is he working? Is he working in the interest of Ugandans? If that is the tick. So we need impartial people to be able to implement. The question is, are the religious people impartial? And for record, I am not doubting their impartiality. I'm just trying to emphasize the aspect of being impartial. People have to be impartial. Issue number 3, as I conclude. What would we want to achieve? What are the deliverables? And how do we track those deliverables of the national dialogue? If we say there shouldn't be sectarianism within the army, within the police, within government offices, who is responsible? Whom can I, as the ordinary citizen, Saddam, walk to and ask? This was the task that was agreed upon, and I'm not seeing the deliverables. Who is in charge of that Ugandans can go to and task to? It shouldn't be President Museveni. It shouldn't be Kiiza Besigye. It shouldn't be Mugisha Muntu. It shouldn't be Chagulan Center Bobby Wine. We need that very neutral person that can give us that, look here, Ugandans, on this date, we agreed, and all the parties were available, we agreed that the deliverables of the national dialogue is this, and this is how we have tracked it, and this is the progress report. If that can be able to happen, I am so confident that the national dialogue will benefit. Boundaries will be able to solve so many of the differences we have, that be it political, be it economic, and be it social.
Thank you so much, Hussein, for that. And colleagues, unfortunately, our time is very much fast spent. We have about 5 minutes to be out of here, so I'll give a minute to each of you to give us your final remarks about this particular topic, but also anything you would want to send out. I'll start with you, David.
Yeah, thank you. I give thanks to the Almighty God for giving me this opportunity. My parting shot is, you're a citizen of this country, and I've said so many things, but one of the things I said is that power trickles down. That's a fact. Nobody just has power from nowhere. So if you see the corrupt people powerful in this country, you know where they get their power from. So it's very important that you be involved in making decisions, because at the end of the day, it comes from you. Once you have the power, every 5 years we have an election, and we have, for me, that's what I call the national dialogue. We dialogue on the people who are in leadership, what they should be, what ideas should be done. That's the real national dialogue, and you should be involved as a citizen. You should make sure your voice is heard. If you just sit home, if you just do nothing, then your voice is not being heard, and it's very important for you to participate in these elections. The Alliance for National Transformation is here for you. We have put a platform where we can come together for us, we still believe in non-violent transition. So that's where we are not pessimistic. We are still optimistic that a non-violent transition is possible, whether now or later. But we are opting for that. So I call upon you all to participate.
Thank you so much, David Ntale, for that submission, for your views, and for the call to the progressives of the country to come and make sure the country moves in the right direction. Yes, Hussein.
Thank you. My parting shot is Mahatma Gandhi of India and Nelson Mandela. One of the tools they employed to be able to achieve and move their country forward was the non-violent means. That in itself involves the aspects of dialogue, in itself that involves the aspect of being reasonable in situations where at times you cannot even apply reason. And unfortunately, me and you, our viewer, I don't think there's another country we call home except Uganda. So we all have a role to play in trying to change our society, but I would also want to appeal. How would it feel if today Aaron Kiiza was your father and was your breadwinner, but today as we speak he's being incarcerated? How many of that do we need to see as a result of our actions? So your actions matter in every situation, but we have every other right to do the actions that he did, but we must do it with caution. We must do it when it is necessary. We must do it in situations that warrant it. Not every time you want to be a champion of violence. That will not take you anywhere. But most importantly and lastly, that we must love our country and we must be in position to be able to shape the future of our kids in the near future, because this country will live to stay. Me and you and the leaders around may go, but this country will live to stay. The country is bigger than us, for God and my country.
Thank you so much, Hussein. I seem to lose the second name.
Hussein Abale.
Abale. Thank you so much, Abale Hussein, for that, and hopefully the citizens and indeed the leaders are listening to that. And last but not least, Oprah.
All right, thank you so much for having us on the show. It's been a pleasure. It's been a lovely discussion. And I just want to say I am a believer in change. I am a believer that things can always get better. And I just urge us as citizens of Uganda in our different capacities, whatever we can do to achieve that end, let everyone do what they can. The ones who are radical, the ones who are systematic, and the ones who are liberal. I believe if all of us in our different capacities join hands and take deliberate steps to bring about change, we can definitely achieve it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oprah, for that. And once again, I want to pass my thanks to you, Abale Hussein, for making time for the conversation and indeed for the good views you share on this particular platform. David Ntale, thank you so much for your views and for making time to join the conversation. And indeed, Oprah, blessed Nkalubo, Joy, thank you so much for your views and for making time to join the conversation. And to you, our viewers, thank you so much for keeping it the Youth Roundtable on Civic Space TV. Special thanks to the team behind the machines, and indeed special thanks to the Center for Constitutional Governance and all our partners for making sure this happens today, tomorrow, year one, year two, and together we shall build a better country. I want to say good evening and may you have freedom always.